I don't believe that there's going to be parity across both chains. So completely independent mechanics, right? So when you really look at where tokens derive their value from, a lot of the value is coming from the thing. Well, it always comes from the thing it's paired to, right? So HEX on Ethereum chain primarily paired to USDC. So the USDC is that reference to what that HEX is worth. Okay. And there's a number of factors that affect that. And there's pairings to ETH as well. ETH has its own price performance. There's all sorts of arbitrage opportunities that are happening all over the place. And if ETH goes up in price, pretty much everything else on the Ethereum chain goes up in price with it because everything's paired to it. So now you have PulseChain that's completely independent of that, right? And it has its own mechanics. It has its own, there's buy and burns and PulseX. There's all sorts of stuff going on ETH chain. They have nothing at all to do with PulseChain. And then you have HEX that's paired to things on each chain. Where's the parity happen? Parity only really happens when there's an arbitrage, like I explained earlier, where there's a guarantee you'll get a 1-for-1. Look, the supply differences for even things like HEX are going to be completely different across the two chains. They'll start at the same thing, but then as the staking behaviors are different across the two chains, the total supply will be different. The liquidity pool and those depths will be completely different. ETH might shoot up in price one day and PulseChain stays stagnant, or vice versa, right? So you can't really say you're going to pair those two things together through a bridge, which does have risks, by the way, bridge risks. Pair those two things together and just say that they're going to stay the same price. And some people have said, well, what happens if, a benevolent actor comes in with just tons of tokens and makes the liquidity depth so thick that, they just it's hard for them to move against each other. Well, there's really no incentive for a guy to do that because you actually do want different performance on ETH chain or on PulseChain, right? If PulseChain's the premier chain, Richard Hart founded it and he wants it to perform better than ETH and he wants HEX and everything on it to perform very well. Why would you link the two together through super thick liquidity pools, right? And just try and make it so HEX is just the same price across the two chains? Why would you even do that? Why do you what's the point? And it's a constant moving target because of the different supply differences and all that. Right. So it's just one more thing a guy has to manage to try and provide exit liquidity back to ETH chain or exit liquidity from ETH chain back to PulseChain. And it gets super impossible to manage. And there's just why would you do it? It's ridiculous.
Well, if the OA didn't make any moves, what would they make, you think?
Yeah, I think
if it's not parity, then what?
I think they'll be paired together, but I don't necessarily think you'll see the same price. One on one chain may be a different price than the other. And people are going to have to figure that part out. Like which one is worth more, right? Let's look at the total supply. Let's look at the staking behaviors over here. When are stakes coming out? Are these typical stakers that are coming out? Are they typical dumpers? Or are these guys that like to restake? Those behaviors will end up being different on the two chains. Right. So that tells me the prices are also going to be different. People are going to sell on one chain at different times than selling on the other chain.
Get ready to update those stats websites. A lot of good stats websites are going to need to support Pulse now. But that's a great point. It's something that, like why would they maybe, especially if they favor one chain or the other, such as PulseChain, maybe they want a higher price. Interesting to see. Go